Today's Memorial Day, and I thought, is there a story that comes to mind? It's not of a veteran who died, but a man who made a profound difference in saving lives. It's an example of how healing can come in forms we don't expect. So I had a mentor that helped me, Jay, and he's passed on now. And he had helped me understand hierarchical thinking and really was a great contribution to my life. He knew I had finished the first men's book, Finding Our Fire, and he said, I want you to help me become a man, which seemed a little unusual, but he had done so much for me. I said, well, I'll help you any way I can. And then I went to his house and he told me a story of how he always felt he wasn't man enough, and he was a very compassionate and soft-spoken and very kind human being. I said, well, tell me what occurred. He said, well, I had a lucid vision of my father and I think grandfather or something, and said, you're not ready to pass on yet. You need to become a man. And then he sat down and thought, who might help me with this? And I came to mind. Quite unusual. And so I said, all right, well, let's just talk and kind of like first teach me what is the evidence you're not a man, and feel like you're not man enough, which I've talked about in my book, Finding Our Fire. That's a question that many young men have. And he told me that about, the reason and so forth. But then I said, well, let's go through your past. And we got to the time in the war where he was drafted, and he felt the only way he could accept going there and face the fear of what might be asked of him or what he may or may not do was to accept the fact that he was at peace if he died or not, or lived. And then he was put on a boat, and his job was to be the medic with insufficient training. There are a whole bunch of books, so he massively studied them and really took it serious of how to be basically the medic for the boat. And then one day he found out that the men on the boat were going to leave the boat and basically go and rape and pillage a Chinese ally. And he thought, well, he certainly couldn't do anything physical, but what could he do? And he got in front of them before they left, and he said, if any of you leave this boat at this time, and any of you are ever wounded, I'll not help you. I will not help you live. And he says, no matter what it does, I'm holding my ground on it. And he literally stopped the action. And he had story after story of this, and we kind of went through of what could be more of the essence of a man taking a stand for something greater than themselves. And he said anyone on that boat could beat him up. He didn't know how to fight, and that was the only tool he had. And we went through this through his whole life, almost like examining it. And all we did is talk. I said, look, I'm not a professional. I'm just a friend, and we're talking. I won't take this on any other way. It was amazing, story after story of amazing courage for something greater than himself. And really what I see is often the essence of the positive side of the masculine. And that doesn't mean women can't have these characteristics too. And Then we were done. It was over several visits, and I owed him so much. I was glad to do it. And then sometime later, I asked him what happened. How did he feel? And he said the visions came to him, the father and son, and said, "You're now ready to transition." And I said, "What about you?" He says, "I'm a man." And then not too long after that, he was quite a bit older. He had lived a rich life, but he had to go on dialysis, and then at some point chose hospice to end. But this was a story I really haven't recorded yet that to me is an essence of there are many pathways to healing. And I just want to honor and appreciate Jay for all he did for me. That's another story, but it was a tremendous contribution to my life. Part of why I'm so committed that after 17 years, I wrote the book and finished the book, that is, of Taboo, the Lost Codes of Men, and that there's a room for these conversations, remembering Jay, and a mentor that made a profound difference in my life.